Anamorphine, a beautiful and haunting experience that's more art than game, and yet it stumbles on a few technical issues. Let's unpack it all. I'm Reload. It's a fine day for video games, and let's take a close look at Anamorphine. I've got a lot to say about this game, so this may be a rather long review, but if you're really interested in purchasing Anamorphine, I encourage you to stay with me. It's one of those rare games out there that tackles the issue of mental health head-on. You take a role of Tyler, who is trapped reliving past memories as a method of coping with tragedy. It's pure environmental storytelling at its best, and quite frankly, the first game that I played featuring a trigger warning about very sensitive subjects, along with the ability to turn off the cutscenes. Even though technically it's a game, I think an experience is a much better term for Anamorphine. There's absolutely no user interface elements or dialogue options, only a few glowing items spread across the levels that trigger an action. No enemies to fight or escape, and you're free to explore as slowly as you'd like, taking in every single detail. It's just you and the story in Anamorphine is superb. From beginning to end, the story is well crafted to deliver a very important message. It's not so much the mere sequence of events that is interesting, but the emotional toll that these events take on the protagonist, that we get to experience through the beautiful visuals that are full of symbolism and various allegories. That's why I would personally label Anamorphine as an art experience rather than a game. It's also one of the reasons why I didn't go with my usual route of showing the raw gameplay with the commentary as means to showcase the game. I think everyone playing this game will experience the story in their unique way, and in my opinion, the game elicits more of a quiet introspection as you discover the story and connect with the protagonist. Of course, there's some major spoilers that I wanted to avoid giving away, as having played through it, I think it's important to actually experience the story as a whole. And the other reason why I'm not showing the raw gameplay, I'll get into just a little bit later in the video. I know I've been fawning over the story in this review for the past 2 minutes, but really that is the best part of Anamorphine. It deals with very serious subject matter, and it affected me on a personal level. After finishing the game, I sat back and processed my thoughts for some time. There was a lot to process, to say the least, and very few games out there left such an impression on me. But let's start getting into more technical points. The whole experience took me roughly 2 hours to complete, which is actually kind of a refreshing change in my opinion. At the time of making of this review, I am unsure of the price point for this game, so it's for you to decide the game time per price ratio. The gameplay itself takes elements from games such as Antechamber and Hecto, where the hallways seem to go on forever and change as you make your way back. It's a very good way to simulate being lost in your memories. The whole level design is quite trippy in a good way and projects this dreamlike state through elements like walking out of the room through one door that leads you to the same room just at a different moment in time. There are several key moments in this game with absolutely stunning and surreal visuals that are further enhanced by a beautiful cello soundtrack. The audio in Anamorphine is excellent. The soundtrack ties the whole game together and is beautifully written to fit the theme of the game. Unfortunately, at this point, the technical aspects of Anamorphine start to break down. Overall, the graphics quality is rather mediocre. I know I said that visuals are stunning and that seems like a contradiction, but most of the level design from the graphics standpoint looks like basic graphics that you see in other indie games. Aside from those few key gameplay moments where it kicks into overdrive, it's all very standard. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but something to be aware of. I found the controls to be a little off. At times I found myself sprinting through tiny rooms where I wanted to be slower and walking at a snail's pace in a big environment where I just wanted to move faster. And it would be awesome to be able to adjust the field of view just a little. Sadly, there was no option for that, and I found it to be rather narrow. Quite frankly, the menus in the game need a lot of polish. In the review version that I was playing through, that element of the game looked like it was incomplete. It's not that big of a deal, everything worked with only few minor glitches, but it detracted from Anamorphine feeling like a complete product. But the biggest issue that I experienced was the VR implementation. I want to preface this that I'm aware there's going to be a game day patch available. The developers are aware that there are issues with VR and hopefully they will fix it with the next patch. But the following is what I experienced playing on Oculus Rift on the review copy before the release date. First and foremost, there was no support for the Oculus Touch controllers. The controls were not mapped and they were not performing the way they're supposed to. At the time of making of this video, the developers are not going to be releasing the game on the Oculus Store. It's in their plans to release it there later on, so it could be just an issue of them not fully implementing Oculus Rift yet. And for all I know that HTC Vive will work out perfectly, but if you're planning to play this on Oculus Rift, you have to have a controller nearby. You will not be able to use your keyboard and mouse, but you can use something like the Xbox controller or the Steam controller. That is the only way to actually control your character within the game. But let me forewarn you, it's definitely more of a seated experience. In my playthrough, it definitely seemed like Anamorphine needs more optimization for VR. I was using my Steam controller and the directional controls were not really syncing up with where I was looking. That's not normally a problem, but considering that I could only move forward and backward or strafe left and right using my directional controller, I had to use the additional control of actually switching my center view around, which is what you typically do with your mouse when you play non-VR games. But combining that with moving my head really started to amp up the discomfort level. Basically, the only way to counteract it was to keep my head completely stationary. That kind of beats the purpose of VR. Now, I pride myself on having an iron stomach when it comes to VR nausea. I play all my VR games on max nausea settings, if you will. But Anamorphine really started to churn my stomach. Especially at what I would say was my favorite moment in the whole game. There's this surreal otherworldly garden that you get to explore and it feels like the whole ground is breathing. All those wavy motions in the background and the foreground combined with the awkward controls really made me think, maybe I should stop playing this right now. I pushed through, but it wasn't easy. And there was this really weird glitch during the level changes that made my screen go split screen for each of my eyes. Now that was a really interesting experience, but not something that I would like to try again. Once again, I'm pretty sure the developers are aware of these glitches and it could be that it's only my system that has been experiencing them. But as interesting and awesome as the game was, playing through it on the flat screen PC mode, it would have so much more impact and immersion in VR. I really hope that Arctic 5 will fix these issues. I will definitely make a comment on this video and provide you with a follow-up video once they do. But it was quite a bummer not to be able to actually live through the story in VR. Having said that, if you don't have a VR headset, you actually will be able to play this game quite nicely. It's definitely an experience for more mature audiences. And after I finished it, I walked away happy that I got to play through it and actually it made me think. It's rare these days that games make you think, and I applaud the developers for that. Now, would I recommend this game? Not knowing the current price point makes this a little bit more difficult. If you're in the market for a concise yet very powerful story, you should pick it up. The developers have put a considerable amount of time into making this game, so I'm convinced that they will fix all the VR issues. Overall, I would say that the good outweighs the bad by a lot when it comes to Anamorphine. And on a bright note, technical issues can always be fixed, but you can't fix a bad storyline when it comes to environmental storytelling. And Anamorphine has a superb, haunting, yet beautiful story behind it. That's why I would rate it 3 out of 5 considering its technical issues, and I will definitely bring you an update once the Oculus Rift issues are solved. Thanks so much for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it and subscribe for latest VR gameplay reviews. I'm Reload and I'll see you in my next one.